Imagine you are the chief executive of a massive corporate group.
Right.
You spent the last, I don't know, 8 months orchestrating this multi-million-dollar acquisition.
Oh, wow. A massive deal.
Exactly. The financing is logged. The board is absolutely thrilled. The press release is queued up, and then bam.
Yeah.
Everything grinds to just a devastating screeching halt.
That is a terrifying scenario.
Right. And why does it happen? Because somewhere in the basement of your building, an overwhelmed lawyer just didn't check a specific box on a lease renewal in time.
It really is a nightmare. And frankly, it's a very common one. For a long time, the corporate legal department was, treated like an organizational safety net that nobody really wanted to look at.
Yeah.
You only interacted with them when something was either about to go very wrong or, well, already had.
And their reputation definitely matched that. If you've ever navigated a large corporate structure, the old stereotype, right?
Right.
The Department of No.
The Department of No. Absolutely.
Their perceived job was basically just to draft the contracts, find the fatal flaws in your brilliant business plan, and, act as a giant wall to keep the company out of trouble.
Right. The ultimate risk managers.
But if you look at the reality of massive corporate groups today, and the sources we are looking at for this deep dive focus on some real heavy hitters across the African continent. Companies like Old Mutual, ABSA, and ShopRite. If you look at them, that old stereotype is just completely dead.
Well, it has to be dead, simply due to the sheer speed of modern commerce. Today, in-house corporate lawyers, they can't just be these risk-averse speed bumps anymore.
No, not at all.
They are expected to be agile business partners. They have to understand the commercial strategy deeply, anticipate regulatory risk long before it becomes an actual crisis, and do all of this while managing costs.
Costs that are under constant, intense scrutiny from the executive board.
Right, exactly.
Which brings us to the core mission of our deep dive today. We are exploring a detailed framework called Legal Project Management, or LPM. We really want to figure out exactly how these legal teams can shift from being viewed as like financial black holes, pure cost centers that just drain our resources, to highly valued strategic assets. Okay, let's unpack this. Because to me, this feels like asking a professional athlete to suddenly play a completely different sport.
It really is a massive pivot.
Like, the old school legal department was basically a goalkeeper. Their only job was to stand in front of the net and just block shots. But this new expectation, it's asking them to be a playmaker.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
They have to be out on the field driving the strategy forward and actually setting up the plays for the rest of the business.
What's fascinating here is the central tension of that exact evolution. Because the friction isn't that these departments are bad at their jobs. They're staffed by genuinely excellent, highly educated lawyers.
Right, some of the smartest people in the building.
Precisely. But consider their training. They spent years in law school learning case law, jurisprudence, and how to do meticulous, flawless legal work. They were explicitly not trained to run a high-volume, commercially accountable business unit. Law school, that doesn't teach you operational throughput.
No, they definitely don't have classes on that.
No, it doesn't teach capacity planning. It teaches you to find every possible risk, no matter how small, and just analyze it to death.
Wait, so if the problem is that you need to run an internal legal department, like a highly efficient business, why don't they just copy traditional law firms? Because law firms are incredibly lucrative businesses, right? They have huge margins, fancy offices, massive profit pools. Why doesn't that operational model just translate over to the in-house team?
Well, it is a tempting trap, and it's actually where a lot of corporate legal departments fail when they try to modernize.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Legal project management actually started in the law firm context, but the fundamental structures of those two worlds are just entirely opposed.
How so?
In a traditional external law firm, the management challenge is almost entirely about profitability. A firm uses project management to scope a matter accurately, manage their client's budget, and eliminate wasted time that, erodes their profit margin.
Okay, that makes sense.
Their ultimate goal is to price their work to reflect the value they deliver. So the central tension is always the external client relationship.
Because they bill for their time. The longer they work, the more revenue they generate.
Exactly. Which is precisely the opposite of an in-house team.
Right.
An in-house legal department doesn't bill anybody. There is no external client paying an invoice at the end of the month. There is no per matter revenue. Structurally, they are a cost center.
Wow, okay.
So their value isn't measured in billable hours. It's measured differently in risk mitigated, deals enabled, disputes avoided, and overall business outcomes supported. And their stakeholders aren't clients. They are their own colleagues, the board of directors, and the executive team.
Wait, so if you're not tracking billable hours, how do you prove you're actually doing anything valuable? I mean, that creates a massive measurement problem, doesn't it?
It really does.
If you're a traditional law firm, your value is highly visible. It's the invoice you just sent that got paid. But if you're in-house and you spend like 3 weeks meticulously reviewing a contract to avoid a disastrous company-ending lawsuit, I mean, nothing happens.
Exactly. The business just continues as normal.
Right. Nobody sees the disaster that didn't occur. How do you possibly quantify the absence of a catastrophe?
Well, that measurement gap is the exact reason why in-house teams need a completely different operational system. They need legal project management, not to price their work, but to make their invisible work visible.
Visible, measurable, and demonstrably aligned with the broader business strategy, according to the sources.
Precisely. And that transformation, it has to start with a fundamental shift in mindset. It requires moving away from a task orientation to an outcome orientation.
Okay, let's break that down, because the source material mentions this specific tactic where LPM teaches lawyers to start every single matter with a business outcome statement.
Yes.
So instead of a lawyer sitting down and saying, I am drafting an NDA, which is, standard non-disclosure agreement, they're trained to say, I am protecting the proprietary data for our new product launch.
Right.
That sounds like a neat little psychological trick, but does it actually change anything on the ground?
It changes everything about how the lawyer approaches the work.
Really?
Yeah, think about it. If you are just drafting an NDA, you might spend 2 weeks arguing over boilerplate clauses with the other party's lawyer because you want the document to be legally perfect.
Because you're a perfectionist lawyer.
Right. But if your stated outcome is protecting the data for a product launch happening on Tuesday, suddenly speed becomes a factor. You triage the risk.
Oh, I see.
You realize that a contract isn't just an isolated legal document. It enables a revenue relationship, or it protects the intellectual property that gives the company its competitive edge.
So a regulatory compliance project isn't just a box-ticking exercise. It literally protects the company's license to operate.
Exactly.
But isn't that just adding another layer of corporate bureaucracy?
Yeah.
I mean, we're asking lawyers who are already overworked to essentially fill out a philosophical form about business goals before they can even start filling out the actual legal forms.
I know it sounds like an extra step, but it actually removes bottlenecks.
The hell?
Because lawyers who lead with business outcomes are treated as strategic partners. They get invited to the early strategy meetings because they speak the language of the business.
Ah, whereas lawyers who just talk about the minutiae of the legal process are treated as mere service providers.
Yes, and they're usually kept in the dark until the absolute last minute.
Which brings up the sheer, staggering volume of work these people are handling. I mean,
Right.
We are talking about massive corporate entities here.
Massive.
They are juggling commercial contracts, regulatory filings, employment disputes, and ad hoc advice from basically every single department.
It's an unbelievable workload.
And the standard reaction when a department gets overwhelmed with that kind of volume is usually just, well, we just need to increase the budget and hire more lawyers.
And that almost never solves the core problem.
Right.
Because if you have a high-volume department, the workload is structurally impossible to manage simply by throwing more bodies at it. Without systems in place, adding more lawyers just gives you a larger group of lawyers who are all burning out simultaneously.
That sounds incredibly expensive and unproductive.
It is. That's why LPM introduces rigorous prioritization frameworks. It forces a head of legal to allocate resources rationally.
So instead of just grabbing whatever file is on top of the pile, you are matching the complexity of the matter to the appropriate seniority level of the lawyer.
Yes, exactly. You don't have your senior legal counsel spending 3 days reviewing standard low-risk supplier contracts.
Right, that would be a huge waste of their expertise.
You systematically identify what needs to be handled internally, what can be standardized, and what needs to be shipped out to expensive external counsel. You build capacity planning into your daily operational rhythm.
Rather than only realizing you have a bottleneck when a massive deadline has already been missed.
Precisely.
Okay, so you fix the mindset to align with the business, and you establish a framework to handle the sheer volume of work. But when it's time to actually execute, say, passing a complex contract back and forth between 5 different departments, how do you stop it from just sitting on someone's desk for 3 weeks?
That's the operational challenge.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because without a structured approach, Treating a contract life cycle like a casual, informal process is like running a relay race in the dark, where no one knows who is supposed to grab the baton next.
That's a perfect analogy.
Right. You have the business unit running full speed, they hold their hand out behind them, and drop. The contract stalls.
And the baton gets dropped constantly. Just think about the life of a single commercial agreement. You have the initial instructions from the business unit, then the legal drafting, then multiple rounds of negotiation, then you need risk sign-off from compliance, then execution.
And finally, ongoing management, right? Like tracking variations or renewals.
Exactly. And without a system, every single one of those handoffs is a point of failure. Deadlines get missed, version control is lost, ownership becomes ambiguous, and key stakeholders suddenly realize they were never even consulted.
The sources outline specific LPM tools designed to prevent this, things like templates, playbooks, and liability approval matrices. Can we dig into that last one?
Sure.
Because liability approval matrix sounds intensely technical. How does a tool like that actually save a lawyer's time?
It sounds complex, but a liability approval matrix is simply a pre-agreed set of rules about who is allowed to accept what level of risk.
Oh, yeah.
In a chaotic department, if a supplier wants to change an indemnity clause, the junior lawyer panics and emails the general counsel, who takes 3 days to reply. The deal stalls.
Right, classic bottleneck.
But with a matrix, the rules are documented in advance. It essentially says, if the financial risk is under $50,000, the junior lawyer can approve it. If it's over $50,000, it goes to the senior counsel.
Oh, wow. So it automates the decision-making process for routine risks.
Exactly.
So you are basically building an operational infrastructure. It allows a relatively small in-house team to handle a volume of commercial work that would otherwise require an absolute army of attorneys.
It creates visibility, and that visibility naturally solves another dangerous problem in corporate legal work, which is stakeholder management. This addresses what is often called the risk of silence.
The risk of silence, meaning the massive risks that are taken when the legal team isn't even in the room.
Precisely. Think about how often major business decisions that create enormous legal exposure are made without any legal input whatsoever.
Yeah, that happens a lot, I'd imagine.
It is rarely because the business side maliciously wants to break the law. It's usually because they genuinely don't know when legal needs to be consulted.
Or perhaps the legal team's communication has been inconsistent in the past.
Right. But the most common reason is that the business unit assumes asking legal will just slow the whole deal down.
Right, they view legal as the Department of No. So they stay silent, sign the deal, and just hope for the best.
LPM fixes this through structured stakeholder mapping. In-house counsel learn exactly which people need to be engaged at which specific stages of a matter.
So they proactively position themselves at the decision points that actually matter, rather than finding out about a messy deal after the ink is already dry.
Yes.
And a large part of that comes down to changing how lawyers communicate with the business, right? The text talks heavily about the discipline of writing for the reader, which, if you think about it, is a huge uncomfortable shift for a trained attorney.
It is a completely different muscle. If a CEO asks a lawyer if they can terminate a lease, a traditional lawyer will write a 10-page memo outlining the nuanced history of property law and then, bury their recommendation in the final paragraph.
Which the CEO will literally never read.
Exactly. They don't have the time. LPM teaches lawyers to flip that entirely. You lead with the conclusion, yes, we can terminate, but it will cost a penalty fee.
Ah, clear and concise.
Right. Then you provide the context in decreasing order of importance. You separate the complex legal mechanics from the actual business recommendation, so the C-suite, the chief executives running the company, can immediately make an informed decision.
Okay, so if we summarize so far, you've got better mindset, workload frameworks, operational templates, and clear communication. But eventually, the CFO is going to call a meeting to review your budget.
Oh, yes, the inevitable budget meeting.
Right. You can have all the operational structures and great communication in the world, but if the CFO is looking to ruthlessly cut costs across the company, how do you survive that conversation?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, budget conversations are won with data. Period.
Data.
Yes. If an in-house legal department cannot quantify its contribution to the business, it is perpetually vulnerable. The CFO will look at their department and simply see a giant line item of expenses, and they will immediately face cost-cutting, pressure to outsource, and staff reductions.
Exactly. But departments utilizing LPM operate from a fundamentally different position of power because LPM literally builds measurement into the practice itself.
The sources highlight metrics like cycle times.
Cycle time is a perfect example. How fast are contracts getting turned around? Yeah. If you can show the CFO that you reduce the time it takes to close the sales contract from 14 days to 4 days, you have directly accelerated revenue for the company.
Wow. Yeah, that's a powerful metric.
You track matter throughput, you track compliance rates, and external spend management.
So these are internal KPIs, key performance indicators that translate directly into the language a CFO actually speaks.
Exactly. You aren't handing them vague legal metrics. You are handing them data tied directly to the company's financial objectives. You are providing hard evidence that you are a strategic asset, not just a cost line. To really drive this home for you listening, I want to put you in the hot seat for a second. Imagine you are the head of legal at one of these large corporations right now. The source text has this incredible diagnostic health check.
Oh, yes. The 5 questions.
5 pretty brutal questions you need to ask yourself before you even think about investing in new software or asking for more budget. Let's walk through these.
Let's do it.
Question 1. Do you have documented workflows for your highest volume matter types? Say, a standard non-disclosure agreement or an employment settlement.
And if your answer to that is no, and every single lawyer on your team is handling those routine matters differently based on their own personal habits,
Which happens a lot.
then you aren't actually running a cohesive department. You're just housing a collection of individual solo practitioners under one roof.
Ouch. Okay, question 2. When the CEO asks you for a fast, accurate status update on a critical matter, can you give it to them immediately?
That question reveals your operational visibility. Because if you have to spend 2 days emailing your team to figure out where a contract is, critical information is just locked away inside the heads of individual lawyers.
Right, totally inaccessible. Question 3. Do you have documented criteria for exactly when to instruct external counsel and a strict protocol for managing that external spend?
If you don't, your external legal costs are just a wild, unpredictable variable.
A black hole.
Basically, you are managing your budget reactively, simply waiting for the invoices from law firms to arrive, rather than strategically controlling what gets sent out in the first place.
Question 4, and this ties right back to our CFO conversation. Can you tell the executive board what your legal department saved or enabled for the business in the last quarter, in hard monetary terms?
Yeah, if you cannot point to the financial value your team protected or enabled, your next budget cycle is going to be incredibly painful.
And finally, question 5. Do business units come to you early in their decision-making process, or do they only show up after a massive problem is already developed?
That is the ultimate litmus test of your internal reputation.
Really?
Yeah, it tells you immediately whether your communication style has successfully positioned your team as a trusted business partner or merely as a frustrating obstacle to be avoided until it's absolutely necessary.
Wow, so if you were running an internal team
Yeah.
and you just found yourself struggling to comfortably answer more than 2 of those questions, LPM is no longer just a nice-to-have, shiny new management theory.
Not at all.
It is the specific, necessary tool required to fix those exact operational gaps.
And we can see exactly what fixing those gaps looks like in the real world, particularly for the African corporate context. The sources highlight a highly relevant case study of a major South African retailer.
Oh, right. Let's talk about that. Think about the sheer scale of a retail giant, hundreds of supplier contracts, complex franchise agreements, property leases for store locations, and thousands of employment matters all happening simultaneously.
It's massive, and the text notes that before they implemented LPM, that legal department operated in a state of continuous, frantic urgency.
Everything was an emergency.
Everything. Matters escalated unpredictably. Deadlines were missed simply because no one was systematically tracking when a lease was up for renewal.
And imagine what a missed renewal means in retail. It means a flagship store could suddenly lose its right to operate.
Exactly. The legal team was perpetually reactive, just putting out fires. But once they applied legal project management principles, the entire dynamic shifted.
What was the biggest change?
Well, they implemented contract templates, which drastically reduced the time their lawyers spent drafting routine agreements from scratch.
Oh, that makes sense.
They set up automated renewal calendars that triggered proactive reviews long before a critical contract expired.
And they instituted those liability approval matrices we talked about earlier. So risk decisions were escalated to the right executive automatically, rather than just sitting in someone's inbox.
Yes. Because of all that structure, the business units actually knew what to expect. The legal timeline wasn't a mystery anymore, which meant legal started getting consulted way earlier in the decision process.
And the most compelling part of this case study, the legal team did not need to hire a dozen more people to achieve this turnaround.
Right. They didn't need to be larger, they just needed to be fundamentally better organized.
Which raises a very practical question for you listening.
Yeah.
How do legal professionals actually learn to do this? Because as we establish, they don't teach operational workflow or budget management in law school.
They certainly don't.
Do you just send your lawyers to a generic corporate management seminar?
I mean, you could, but generic project management theory ripped from the IT or construction industries usually fails when applied to legal work.
Why is that?
Legal frameworks require a nuanced understanding of privilege, confidentiality, and regulatory risk. That is why specialized training is so critical.
And the text points us to a specific resource for this, Pocket Advisor.
Yes, Pocket Advisor.
They are currently Africa's only accredited training provider for the IILPM, that's the International Institute of Legal Project Management.
And that global accreditation is vital. It signals that the methodologies being taught are actually grounded in the realities of legal practice.
Pocket Advisor runs what they call the Applied Legal Project Management course. It's a 15-module deep dive. But what really stands out is that it includes live weekly facilitation by Nicolene Schomenlow.
She is an award-winning attorney with over 20 years of experience.
Right, including founding and building her own highly successful firm. So you aren't just learning from an academic theorist, you're learning from someone who has actually been in the trenches and managed these exact bottlenecks.
And at the end of the program, graduates earn globally recognized certifications. Depending on their experience level, they receive either the LPP, the Legal Project Practitioner Certification, or the LPA, the Legal Project Associate Credential.
Those are serious qualifications recognized across 63 countries.
They really are. It is a massive signal to any executive team that you understand how to run a modern data-driven legal function.
The sources also give us the hard numbers for the investment, which is great. The full course is R$9,500.
Which is quite reasonable.
Yeah. And however, if you attend their free LPM 101 introductory session first, they offer a R$1,000 discount, bringing the total down to R$8,500.
Which is a highly accessible price point for professional development, especially considering the course is structured specifically to work around the demands of an active legal career.
So what does this all mean? If we step back and look at the whole picture of this deep dive, the biggest takeaway for me is that a legal department's position within a company is not fixed.
Not at all.
You do not just get to be respected as a strategic asset simply because you have the word legal on your office door.
Yeah.
That elevated status is earned.
It is earned through rigorous operational discipline.
Exactly. Through generating the right data for the CFO and by visibly, tangibly aligning your daily legal work with exactly what the business is trying to achieve.
This raises an important question, though, a really fascinating endgame for you to consider.
There's
Well, if legal project management is implemented perfectly, if it successfully makes all legal processes completely visible, totally systemized, and relentlessly outcome-focused, is it possible that the ultimate goal is actually empowering the business units themselves?
Wow, okay.
Think about it. With the right templates, the right playbooks, and bulletproof liability matrices in place, could business units eventually be empowered to safely handle 80% of routine legal risk entirely on their own without a lawyer ever touching the file?
That would change everything.
It really would. And if they do, well, how completely does that change the definition of what an in-house lawyer even does in the future?
That is a wild, provocative thought to leave on. Evolving the operational system so flawlessly that you essentially engineer all the routine, low-level work right off your own desk, freeing you up for only the highest level, most complex strategic maneuvers.
It's an incredible vision.
I love that vision. To everyone listening, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. I highly encourage you to look closely at how your own internal teams operate. Ask yourselves those 5 brutal diagnostic health check questions and seriously consider where a little operational discipline might just completely change the game for your organization. Until next time.